Happy birthday, dear French. Happy birthday.
Alright, so grab your popcorn because this story is full of layers and drama. 50 Cent is back, and this time he's spilling tea like it's his full-time job. You know how he does it, no filter, no holding back. But this time, he's really coming for Diddy and French Montana. Now, we all know 50 Cent isn't exactly shy when it comes to calling out Diddy. He's done it before, but this time, he's taking it up a notch. Not only does he throw Diddy under the bus, but he also drags French Montana and even Cuba Gooding Jr. into the spotlight. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Let's break it down. It all started with 50 Cent casually dropping hints that maybe Diddy and French Montana aren't just close friends like everyone thinks, but really close. You know, the kind of close where things might not be as simple as they seem. This wasn't just some random gossip either. Minus 50's been known to stir the pot, and it seems like he's loving every second of it. The whispers about Diddy's friendships with his industry pals have been floating around for years now. It's like every few years, a new name pops up on Diddy's friend list. One day it's Jay-Z, the next is Drake, and now it's French Montana. But with French, the rumors aren't just quiet little whispers anymore, they're pretty loud, like a megaphone blaring in your ear. And of course, 50 Cent is more than happy to turn up the volume and make sure everyone's listening. But before we dive into that, let's take a little detour and talk about French Montana. Now, French's real name is Karim Karbouch, and he's originally from Casablanca, Morocco. He moved to New York City when he was just 13 years old, landing in the South Bronx. And let me tell you, the South Bronx isn't exactly the easiest place to grow up. French's dreams were big, but the reality of life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. When his family moved to the States, things got even harder. 2 years later, his dad packed up and returned to Morocco, leaving French's mom to raise 3 kids on her own. Talk about putting the pressure on someone at a young age. But French, he wasn't about to let life knock him down. He knew he had to step up. French threw himself into his passion for music, hustling on the streets and grinding to get noticed. Eventually, in 2007, he dropped his first mixtape. That mixtape was the game changer, the thing that caught Diddy's eye. And you know how Diddy operates. When he sees talent, he swoops in fast. He didn't waste any time. He signed French to Bad Boy Records, and just like that, French was catapulted into the world of fame, fortune, and all the luxury that comes with it. Fancy cars? Check. Designer clothes? Check. Exclusive parties with all the top celebrities? Check. It was a dream come true, but it wasn't all just fun and games. French quickly realized that Diddy's mentorship wasn't just about making music. For French, it was about stepping into a whole new world. But here's where it gets interesting. Diddy's mentorship always comes with strings attached. Nothing in life is ever just handed to you, especially when you're trying to break into the upper echelons of fame and fortune. French had to navigate more than just music. It was a whole new lifestyle, a whole new game, and that's where the real drama starts. 50 Cent isn't just calling out Diddy for fun, he's diving into this deeper world where friendship, business, and personal agendas get tangled up. French is right in the middle of all this, and you can bet the spotlight's only going to get hotter from here. So yeah, that's the scoop. 50 Cent's not just stirring the pot, he's turning it up to a full boil, and we're all watching. Who's really that close with Diddy? Who's in it for business, and who's in it for something else entirely? At this point, who knows? But one thing's for sure, it's about to get even more interesting. Alright, let me tell you about this one time when I was rolling with Diddy. Now, before I dive into it, I know people are always curious about these stories, especially since they're from back in the day. And honestly, if we knew back then that social media and YouTube were gonna blow up, things would have probably gone down a lot differently. But here we are, and now I'm ready to share some of these stories to set the record straight. So here's how it went down. We were in Atlanta, right? Me and Puff are at this exotic bookstore, and I'm just kind of tagging along while he's doing his shopping. First time I've ever been with him in one of those places, so I'm just letting him do his thing. They hand him this brown paper bag, and he starts filling it up with stuff off the shelves. I'm like, okay, he's definitely not here for a quick trip. I knew he was going to pay and probably show everyone what he picked up, so I'm just keeping an eye on what he's grabbing. Now, one of the things he picked up was labeled butt plugs. I couldn't resist. I mean, we were tight friends, not just me being his security guard, so I had to mess with him. I looked over and said, yo, what are you doing with this? Puff just looked at me and said, yo, can I shop by myself? I started laughing and said, all right, man, go ahead, do your thing. He gets to the counter, and instead of showing the cashier what's in the bag, he just pulls out a stack of cash, like a serious stack, not even small bills. Boom, pays, and we're out, just like that. So we leave Atlanta and head to North Carolina for a show. The whole crew's with us, Diddy, me, French, and this other girl. We hop on a G4 jet and head over. Now, the wild part. Later that day, French is everywhere. I mean, luxury dinners, shopping sprees, holidays, you name it. He's with Diddy for all of it, and then Diddy goes and names a croissant after him. French vanilla, can you believe that? I mean, who does that unless there's more to it than just friendship? At this point, people are starting to talk. They're like, wait, Diddy and French are always together at every party, every event, every photo op. What's really going on here? It started to feel like something deeper than just business, you know? Then came the birthday video. You've probably seen it or at least heard about it. French is shirtless, looking like he just came from a spa, sitting at a table while Diddy sings him happy birthday. But this wasn't just any birthday song, this was way too intense. It felt like one of those old Hollywood moments like Marilyn Monroe singing to JFK. Fans went wild, like what is happening here? Social media couldn't stop talking about it. People were calling it the moment Diddy and French's friendship went public in a big way. But wait, there's more. 50 Cent wasn't about to let this slide. He threw Cuba Gooding Jr. into the mix, making everything even messier. Now, Cuba's not exactly a stranger to controversy, but this took things to a whole new level. Producer Rodney Jones files a lawsuit claiming Diddy tried to get him involved in one of his freak-offs, but this wasn't your typical wild party. According to Jones, he met Cuba on Diddy's boat for what he thought was a business meeting. But things quickly got uncomfortable when Cuba allegedly started making moves on him without consent. And get this, Jones didn't just talk about it, he had receipts showing pictures of Cuba getting a little too close for comfort.
Same day, this rapper and him, they all in the room together.
So here's how it went down. One night, I told him he's with Puff right now. They're in the room, busy, don't want to be disturbed, but he didn't care. He was like, I'm going in. I just looked at him serious and said, bro, you're not stepping into that room unless you want things to get messy, but he wasn't listening. And he said, I'm going in anyway. At that point, I had to step up. I was like, listen, man, you ain't going in there unless I stop you first. And when he tried to move past me, I did just that, grabbed him and threw him against the piano. It got real quiet for a second. That's when Puff and Jay came running out, both naked, towels in hand, looking like they had no idea what just happened. Ja looked at me all out of breath like, yo, what's going on? That's my cousin. He knows me. Puff, still trying to make sense of it, goes, what happened, Gene? I just replied, he tried to get into the room. I told him no. The air was thick with unspoken words as Puff's voice cut through the silence, trying to ease the situation, but there was no denying the weight of what had just gone down. Yo, Ja, Puff said, his tone trying to sound reassuring, though it was clear he was just trying to keep the peace. You don't want to be in that room. Trust me, you're better off. The words lingered in the air, but something in Jay's expression told a different story. It wasn't so much that Puff was wrong, it was the kind of power play that felt more like a warning than advice. In that moment, it wasn't just about keeping Ja away from potential trouble, it was about sending a subtle message to everyone in the room. No one was bigger than the game, and if you wanted to be a part of it, you had to play by the rules. Jay didn't say anything in response though. He just stood there for a second, weighing the situation in his mind. There was no need to argue. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Sometimes, silence is the loudest answer. You could feel the pressure building, as if every pair of eyes in that room was calculating what would come next. The tension was palpable, thick enough that you could almost taste it. The room was still divided, and the undertones of the situation were as clear as ever. Puff's decision to step in, trying to calm the waters, didn't exactly fix things. It didn't erase the tension, nor did it erase the reality that something deeper was bubbling beneath the surface. Sure, Puff was the one with the power to smooth things over, but even he couldn't make it disappear just by talking. Ja wasn't the kind of person to let things slide easily, especially when he felt slighted or disrespected. It was clear that whatever happened next wouldn't be an easy fix, no matter how many calm words Puff tried to throw out there. They went back into the room after that, but it was evident that the problem was far from over. Just because things seemed to have settled down didn't mean the issues were resolved. Tension still hung in the air, and the undercurrent of distrust was undeniable. Ja wasn't just going to forget what had happened, and Puff knew that even if he didn't outwardly show it. The situation wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The room may have quieted, but you could feel the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Then the next day, I saw him at the concert trying to throw some shade my way, but my guy Frank wasn't having it. I looked at him and said, yo, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Someone's trying to get in a room they shouldn't be. What would you do? Frank didn't miss a beat. He goes, I'd do the same thing, but I wouldn't take any L's for it. We both just laughed. Then Ja said something that caught my attention. You don't want to go in there. There's too much going on. You could tell there was a lot more happening in that room than anyone was ready to admit. And just when I thought it was all over, things took a wild turn. A video popped up, French and Cuba together on stage, acting all close, laughing, dancing. It seemed like they were having a great time, but it made people start asking questions. Was there something going on between them? Diddy didn't make it any better by letting everyone know how close he and French were, posting on social media that French was his brother for life. They were always seen together, partying and hanging out like they were inseparable. A few years back, things began to take a sharp turn for French Montana, and it seemed like his life and career were about to spiral out of control. Rumors started circulating, and the whispers from insiders grew louder. French, a rising star in the music industry, was supposedly involved in some dark and unsettling activities. The most disturbing of these rumors were about him spiking drinks at parties. As these allegations started to take hold, it was hard for anyone to ignore them. People began questioning the kind of company French was keeping and what exactly was going on behind the scenes. Was this just a typical celebrity rumor, or was there some truth to it? Then, the story took an even darker turn. A woman came forward with a shocking accusation. She claimed that she had been invited to one of French's studio sessions. What seemed like an innocent invitation quickly turned into something far more sinister. According to her, her drink was spiked and she was assaulted by both French and a friend of his. The timing could not have been worse for French. He had been working hard to turn things around, to regain his place at the top of the rap game. But just as it seemed like he was getting back on track, this bombshell dropped and his image was hit with a heavy blow. The public was already talking, and now there was a real concrete accusation to back up the rumors. Things weren't looking any better for French Montana when a video surfaced that only seemed to add fuel to the fire. The footage, which was filmed during one of Diddy's infamous parties, showed French, Diddy, and actress Saga looking far too comfortable in the back of Diddy's car. All three were clearly under the influence, their behavior suggestive of more than just a casual hangout. Fans, who were already suspicious of the connection between Diddy and French, immediately jumped to conclusions. This must be one of those wild Diddy parties we keep hearing about, they whispered to each other. Everyone knew that Diddy's parties were legendary, full of excess, and often involved a lot of alcohol, drugs, and questionable behavior. But this was different. This video seemed to paint a much more serious picture of what was happening in Diddy's inner circle, and French's involvement raised more questions than answers. The implications of the video were massive. Not only was French's reputation in jeopardy, but the video also raised questions about the entire culture surrounding Diddy and his influence on those close to him. Diddy, who had long been a towering figure in the music industry, wasn't backing away from the situation. Instead, he doubled down, asserting that French was like family to him, that they were brothers in arms, and nothing was going to tear them apart. The relationship between Diddy and French had always been somewhat mysterious, with many fans wondering just how deep their connection went. Was it purely business, or was there something more? The video and the ensuing drama seemed to answer that question. Their bond was unbreakable, for better or worse. As the allegations and rumors continued to swirl, Diddy and French were seen at more parties and events together. No matter what was being said, nothing seemed off limits. Their connection was solid, and neither of them seemed worried about the damage to their reputations. French, in particular, had always been seen as someone who would do anything to stay in the game, whether it was aligning himself with Diddy or being part of the wild, often reckless, party scene that Diddy was known for. He had always been someone willing to play the game and push boundaries, but now it was clear that those boundaries were starting to blur, and the consequences were much greater than he had anticipated. For French, it must have felt like he was trapped in a whirlwind of bad timing and bad decisions. The accusations against him were serious, and yet, no matter how many times he tried to distance himself from the negativity, the storm seemed to follow him everywhere he went. The video with Diddy and Saga was just the latest in a string of unfortunate events. Was French just trying to fit into Diddy's world? Was he getting too caught up in the celebrity culture, where power and influence often came at a steep price? As the situation continued to escalate, fans and critics alike began to speculate on what French's true intentions were. Was he really in it for the long haul, or was he just using his connection with Diddy to climb the ranks in the industry? Was he willing to risk everything, including his own morals and reputation, just to stay in the game? These were questions that fans had been asking for a long time, but now they had more weight than ever before. Through it all, Diddy remained unfazed. His presence in the media continued to be strong, his empire seemingly as untouchable as ever. If anything, Diddy appeared to be using the drama surrounding French to his advantage. It was no secret that Diddy thrived in the chaos of the music world, and it seemed like he was always surrounded by drama, controversy, and larger-than-life personalities. His ability to stay on top, no matter what, was part of his brand. But was it really worth it? Was being this close to Diddy, with all of his connections and influence, worth the personal cost to French Montana? As more details came out about the incident, it became clear that there was far more going on beneath the surface. French's journey through the highs and lows of the music industry wasn't just about the fame, the parties, or the music. It was about navigating a dangerous world where the stakes were always high and the consequences could be devastating. The lines between loyalty and ambition, family and business, were often blurry, and French found himself caught in the middle of it all. Now, looking back on it, it's hard not to wonder if French Montana really knew what he was getting into when he signed up to be part of Diddy's world. Was it worth the risk? Was he really ready to make those kinds of sacrifices to get involved in a world that operated by different rules? French may have been able to bounce back from past controversies, but this time, things were different. The stakes were higher, and the damage to his image might not be something he could easily repair. As the story continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the saga of French Montana and Diddy is far from over. Fans are still trying to piece together the truth, and with every new rumor, the situation seems to get even more complicated. Whether French can weather the storm, or if this marks the beginning of the end for his career, is something that only time will tell. One thing's for sure, though, this is a story that no one is going to forget anytime soon.
Looking back at the situation and the way, the whole East Coast, West Coast beef and the way he was.
So what exactly went wrong for French Montana? It's a question that's been swirling for years now, with some people saying he just got a little too cocky, especially after his attempt to sue Diddy on liquor. For many, that moment marked a turning point. The timing couldn't have been worse for French, and in hindsight, it's easy to see why some of the most powerful figures in the industry began to show their true colors right after that. Let's take a step back and look at French Montana's rise. He wasn't just another rapper trying to make a name for himself. He was someone who worked his way into the inner circles of the biggest names in the music and entertainment industry. His relationship with Diddy, one of the most influential figures in hip-hop and business, had catapulted him into the spotlight, but it seems that somewhere along the way, French started to feel himself a little too much. He began to think that he was more than just a product of these bigger players. He thought he could stand on his own, maybe even challenge the system that had helped him get to where he was. When French tried to sue Diddy on the high-end tequila brand that he had been involved with, it was more than just a legal battle. It was a sign that he wasn't playing by the rules anymore. He was stepping out of line, trying to take control of his own destiny, and that didn't sit well with the people who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. See, to French, Diddy wasn't just a brand he was promoting, it was supposed to be his. Or at least that's what he thought. He believed that his face on the product gave him a stake in it, or that his involvement meant more than just being a spokesperson. But when things started to unravel with the company, French realized that his position in the whole operation wasn't as solid as he thought. That's when the reality check hit. The powers that be in the game, people like Diddy, who are entrenched in the business world and control major deals, began to show their true colors. They weren't just going to let him walk away with their money or the fruits of their labor. They were clear about it. You can be a part of this, but you're not one of us. In their eyes, French wasn't at the top of the ladder. Sure, he could say that he was a millionaire, even a billionaire, but there was a huge difference between having money and having power. The people running the game had real money, the kind that moved mountains, the kind that could make or break careers in the blink of an eye. To them, French wasn't on their level. He was just a pawn, a figurehead, someone who played the part of a boss, but never really had the kind of influence or money that came with true power. And so, when French tried to push back, when he thought he could go against them and sue, that's when the walls came crashing down. He didn't realize that in their world, you're either with them or against them. There's no in-between. For the people who pull the strings, you can have all the money in the world, but if you try to defy them, they'll show you just how quickly your empire can crumble. They basically said, we've done everything for you so far, but if you think you can take it all for yourself, think again. The way they handled things showed just how much power they had in the industry. They didn't need to make a scene, they didn't need to go to court or start a media war. No, they had other ways of dealing with things, much more subtle and effective methods. If you wanted to go against them, they'd remind you just how powerless you were in comparison. They didn't need to say it outright, they'd just make sure you knew your place. The Diddy lawsuit might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but the underlying message was clear: don't mess with the big dogs unless you're ready to face the consequences. To many in the industry, French's lawsuit against Diddy seemed like an overreach. After all, what had he really built on his own? Sure, he had a reputation, a big name, but he hadn't earned the kind of respect that the real heavyweights had. The people at the top knew that if they let French make waves, others would follow suit. He was seen as a person who could cause problems for them down the road. And so, instead of letting it slide, they made sure that the message got across loud and clear: you can play in our sandbox, but you'll never own it. The backlash French received wasn't just from Diddy. Once the drama started, it quickly became evident that his whole career could be in jeopardy. His relationship with Diddy, which had been the cornerstone of his rise in the industry, also came into question. Diddy, who had once been the mentor and the figure who helped elevate French, was now caught in the middle of the mess. For a while, Diddy kept up the public face of support. He continued to show up at parties and events with French, making it seem like nothing had changed. But the tension was palpable. Everyone knew that the situation wasn't as simple as it looked on the surface. The real question became, was French ever going to be able to stand on his own? Could he ever truly break away from Diddy's shadow and build something of his own? Or was he always going to be a part of someone else's empire? French's decision to go after Diddy wasn't just about money or business, it was a personal move. He wanted more. He wanted to prove that he could be just as successful without relying on others. But in doing so, he made a powerful enemy. And in a world like theirs, that's never a good thing. Fans were split on the issue. Some saw French as a victim, caught up in a system that never gave him the chance to succeed on his own. Others saw him as a fool, someone who overestimated his value and tried to bite the hand that fed him. Whatever side you were on, one thing was clear: the game had changed for French, and it wasn't going to be easy to get back to where he once was. In the end, the story of French Montana's fall from grace wasn't just about money or lawsuits, it was about power. It was about understanding your place in the system and the consequences of thinking you can defy it. The lesson here is a harsh one in the world of entertainment and business. The people at the top aren't just playing to win, they're playing to control. If you're not careful, one wrong move could cost you everything. And for French Montana, that move might have been trying to bite off more than he could chew. Here's the thing, Diddy wasn't even really French's thing. He was just the face of it. The brand had a diversity issue and he helped them fix that. We all thought he was running it, but when he wanted to start his own tequila, he realized they weren't really taking him seriously. He even sent people to check, and they didn't even bother planting a gaff for him. Meanwhile, the other brands had everything ready to go. Pretty shady, right? Naturally, French got mad, and I totally get why. But the company probably just thought, take what we give you and be happy we even let you in the game. Then, when French tried to make moves, they decided to remind him who's really in charge. They sent the ATF to his house, and that was just the start. The message was clear, don't forget who runs this. So now people are wondering, did French get too deep into Diddy's world? Was it worth it? Did he give up more than he bargained for just to climb the industry ladder? Honestly, this whole story has so many twists, it's hard to keep up. What do you think? Was French Montana just a pawn in a bigger game, or is this all just another wild rumor? Drop your thoughts below because this one's definitely not over yet.